Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Mind Shifters Radio with your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife Jeanie. Michael and Jeanie share with you the wisdom of the ancient Aramaic internal process of forgiveness. They offer tools and support 5 days a week. They will support you in building a solid foundation within yourself to live in pure love. In Aramaic, Rachma. Michael is the author of So Why Is This Happening to Me Again? For more information on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. And now your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce.
To the brightness within you, and the truth that is rooted within me.
Hi, and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce. Our call-in number is 646-200-4169. Press 1. That puts you in queue to talk to Michael. We'd love to hear from you. And today is the Memorial Day celebration number 298. And what we're celebrating is to put an end to war on planet Earth, to bring peace about. And the way we're going to do that is by each one of us going inside and doing one small thing that we can do today to get rid of some hostility or fear that's within us, to get rid of our own internal wars. And when we do that, then we will start seeing peace come about on the world. And that's what we're working for. And Michael's getting ready to sign in now. I signed in as host. And I see that David and Tim are both with us. So hello, gentlemen. How are you today?
Doing well, thank you. How was your Thursday? I haven't heard from David. David, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can.
Loud and clear. Good. Beautiful day here at Parkland. Getting ready for my trip. Well, we're having an awesome day here in Tampa, Florida. All is rocking along. We had a very exciting class last night, and the night before we did a lesson from the Course in Miracles, and there were just a bunch of people from every level of working with the Course. And I wish I'd had a video of it because it was just such a rollicking good time. It was just so much fun and looking at serious issues, but at the same time just really enjoying it, having fun, and everybody getting insights. It was a cool evening. We've got a really sweet group of people. So if you happen to be in the Tampa, Florida area, come join us tonight, tomorrow night for our last two free workshops. Tonight we'll be doing codependence to interdependence. I promise we'll knock your socks off if you come to that workshop. And then tomorrow night we'll be doing naturopathic keys to health. So we would be absolutely delighted to have you join us. We're delighted that we're here to be able to support you with these tools and the learning and the teaching and expanding with these tools on a global level. So many places on the planet, the support groups are firmly starting. If you're somewhere where there isn't a support group, you don't have to know anything about this work to start a support group. We have DVDs. Jeanie's got a whole set of instructions on the website for how to get a support group going. When I first met Jeanie, it was actually about 3 months after I met her that she did her first workshop series, and the next week she started a support group. And, of course, she had no knowledge of these tools, but started up, and that group went on for, I don't know, at least 3 or 4 years, and I'm not even sure, but may still be going. And so, of course, the Memorial Day invitation stands as usual. We are here to change the world, and we want you to be part of the team that changed the world. How's that going to happen? Well, what our purpose is in this particular idea is to put an end to war on planet Earth, to literally look at the cause of war, and that is the poverty of being that governs our world. And why is there a poverty of being? And we define being, we define human life as hold a newborn child, you know exactly what a human life is. And so people who live in a poverty of being, who don't have that access to that awesome presence of love that they are, can be brainwashed into doing absolutely anything, any insanity going. And in so doing, being told that what they're doing is right and true and good, and in so doing, give up their human lives. So how are we going to solve that dilemma? Here's the solution. It's really, really simple. Restore human life. Well, how are you going to do that, Michael? Well, here's the plan. Today and every day, you and I are going to look at some issue in our lives where there's any form of hostility or fear. You know, somebody doesn't cooperate, somebody doesn't do what they're supposed to do, whatever it is. Of course, the supposed to is all in the mind of the beholder. And hostility or fear comes up, and we tend to point our finger at them. So here's the plan. Instead of pointing the finger at them, we're going to invite you to step into the process of forgiveness. You see, if your physiology can still produce hostility or fear, then in your physiology is the thing that rips you off for your human life. So we're going to ask you to restore yourself to the human life by forgiving. Oh, you mean I should let them off the hook after the terrible thing they did? I'm going to forgive them? No, I'm not doing that. Well, good. We're glad you're not going to forgive them, because once you understand forgiveness, you'll never forgive anyone ever again for anything. The word forgive in the ancient Aramaic is the tool with which you go inside yourself and you remove your capacity for hostility or fear. You remove that which takes you out of your human life. Of course, we only experience those things when somebody else does something, and so we have this belief system that it's they who cause that in us, but actually it's they who trigger that in us. And when you begin to forgive, you literally move to the point where you edge toward losing the capacity for any form of hostility or fear. And Jeanie, David, Tim, do any of you have a thought on where you've seen that happen that you'd be willing to share to open the space for everybody to comprehend what that might look like?
Are you talking about a time when I got triggered to experience anger I didn't know was in me, or fear that I didn't know was in me?
That would work, sure.
Well, I had one recently. I had purchased a boat back in my earlier years when I was married, and then went through a divorce that I didn't want, and found out that the finances were all upside down. And so years later, I have this boat, and it is sitting on a friend's property, and she's been very, very patient in allowing me to keep it there for no cost. And I got an email from her on Monday. It's been there about 3 years now. And I got an email from her on Monday saying, you have to move your boat by Friday morning. And I went through multiple worksheets and breathing and tapping and just watching how I had fear come up in me. How am I going to get this done? I have patients to see all week. I can't possibly get this done by then. I don't have any time off. I'll have to cancel patients. I'll lose money. I may not be able to move the boat. Where am I going to put it? I had irritation. How dare she not give me any more notice than this? I had confusion. I found myself wondering, well, why can't I think this through? This is a pretty simple problem. It's a boat. It's a trailer. It's got some flat tires that need to be inflated, but it's not that big a deal. Why am I getting so upset? Is that what you're thinking of?
That's it. Tell us what happened.
Well,
why were you getting upset?
Well, I just kept doing the worksheets and found out that I still have a lot of sadness and fear and irritation about feeling like a failure in my marriage. And this is one of the last vestiges of the material possessions from that marriage that need to be discharged. And I can't really get rid of it yet because I still owe too much money on it. And so that's what it was all about. Coming back to my sense of I'm not good enough. I didn't make good enough decisions. I've had a number of different worksheet responses that have allowed me to breathe and relax through and find a whole different level of calm about it. And I've been working with that issue since, well, I picked up the email on Monday morning, and late last night, I finally got a response from my friend. I immediately started to call her and email her back and ask about the details of what she needed. I didn't go at her with anger. I didn't go at her with fear. I simply said, okay, well, I'd be happy to help you get the boat moved. Do you need it moved to a different part of your property or completely off of your property? Is there any, do you have a vehicle that can help me move it, or what are the parameters? When do you need? And I just sent her several notes like that for 3 days. She didn't respond until late last night. And late last night when she responded, it was this bright, happy, oh, that's right, I didn't give you too many details. That's my mistake. It's not a big deal. It just has to be moved, 30 or 40 feet, and it can stay on the property and all this other stuff. So all of the upset and panic that I went through about I have to find a different place for the boat, and it has to be done, Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday. They're not even going to be needing it moved until later in the day on Friday. So
you're telling us it's all over something that never happened except as a reality in your mind. How like life that is, eh?
Well, it's been my life, and I had a suspicion the other night as I was going to sleep. What if it wasn't like that in my life until I learned these worksheets from Michael, and now all of a sudden I'm creating all of the realities in my head? And what if before that it was always created outside of me, and maybe Michael has warped my perception? But it was only a passing thought.
I love it. Yeah, but isn't it a nice warped perception if that's what it is?
Yep.
Sure makes life a lot easier.
Well, it gives me control over things that in the past, and I've always, I have always been a student of this, even in high school. And unfortunately, the reality, the actuality we're living in is that if we understand what is in this work, we are not good consumers. Dan Gilbert is a Harvard psychologist who has a talk on TED.com about why are we happy. And in it he mentions that we have this device in our head to create artificial happiness when we don't get what we want. And he calls natural happiness that what we experience when we do get what we want. And his talk is about how most of us think that artificial happiness is not as good or not as strong or not as valuable as natural happiness. And his whole talk is about how it absolutely is, and why you're never going to get mass communication about this from your government or from your religions is because you're not a very good consumer. And the line he uses is, a shopping mall full of Buddhist monks is not going to be very profitable because these people don't want stuff. And if we don't know that we're creating, that it's a choice to be happy and a choice to be angry and a choice to be confused, that's all happening within us and the realities we create in our mind, then we are controllable. And there are people out there who want to make some money off of the fact that we're controllable.
Well, actually, I would add another dimension to the if I comprehended correctly what you said about this real and artificial happiness is, I think that what he's calling real happiness is still artificial happiness. If it's got anything to do with getting what you want, it's not real happiness. That's all artificial. To me, both levels of that, if I understood you correctly, would be artificial. Real happiness would be hold a newborn child, experience your human life. There's real happiness. Absolutely nothing, no thing whatsoever in the world is required in any way, shape, or form. All that's required is the ownership of a human life and the direct experience of a human life. So to me, that would be the real happiness. That it's got nothing to do with getting what we want or not getting what we want. It's just a result of living in a state of being. And what happens as we come into the world is we have brainwashed into us all of these ideas about, well, when you get what you want, you'll be happy, and when you don't have what you want, you'll be unhappy. And if you get angry enough, then you'll be able to force somebody to give you what you want. And there's just the whole game is just totally insane. There's we haven't talked about it in a little bit, and so a reminder: Jeanie has a link under other links on the website about the NPR interview with Jill Bolte Taylor, who speaks about, from a neuroscientist point of view, as she's having a left brain stroke, her realization of what was going on and how, even though she knew cognitively she may be dying, she's in bliss, she's in happiness. And she realizes that all her pain, all her trauma, all her unhappiness is a total construct of the left brain. And as her left brain breaks down as a result of a stroke, it's gone. And then when she spends 8 years recovering and comes back from that stroke, when her left brain offers her its offering of hostility, fear, pain, trauma, loss of her experience of human life, she says, "Thank you, but no." So it's a pretty cool process, and it's so interesting how we give up this state of being, and of course for 1,000 generations it's been being done. One of the things we got into in last night's workshop is really comprehending that we have every thought, every feeling, every reality from 1,000 generations in us, and the complexity of this biocomputer. I often now in the workshops ask the question: how many here, the first time you sat down at a computer, even knew how to turn it on and start the operating system? Most people are like, well, I didn't have a clue. So how many hours have you spent learning how to become as proficient as you are at the computer? And people, say hundreds, thousands of hours. And so they have, and if there's a bug in the operating system after hundreds and thousands of hours, and this would be, I think, a conversation to share with our friend who actually introduced you to the work, Tim. If you've spent thousands of hours becoming proficient at the computer, and a certain kind of bug shows up, you may have to spend, if you're going to fix it yourself, another 1,000 hours to figure out how to repair that bug in the computer, even though you spent thousands and thousands of hours. And then when you compare the complexity of the latest, Windows 7 or the latest, Apple operating system, it's nothing. It is like child's play compared to this biocomputer and the operating system that we have in us that comes from 1,000 generations of insanity. And in the computer world, there's this term called a TSR, terminate and stay resident. For those who are Windows user, I don't know how this fits in with the Apple user, but for those who are Windows users, down the lower right-hand corner, there's a little box, and in there are TSRs. They're programs that are not currently running, but they're loaded in the memory bank so that in an instant they can be activated. You don't have to wait for a program to start up. It's terminated, but it's resident. It's there ready to operate. And what we have in this biocomputer that most people aren't willing to spend 10 minutes to learn how to operate properly or to clean up or to remove the bugs, what we have are millions of terminate and stay resident programs for every circumstance that everybody in the bloodline has ever believed could make them unhappy. And so, the terminate and stay resident program for I stubbed my toe, the terminate and stay resident program for I got a call to move my boat, the terminate and stay resident program for my spouse didn't do this, my child didn't do that, my parent didn't do that, my employer didn't do that, no. And most people want to become proficient at this operating system that's been in development for, computers been around, half a century? This operating system inside of us has been going on for thousands of years and has had thousands of very, very poor programmers have input into it. And most people are like, give me $5 in 5 minutes and I want to be able to know how it all operates yesterday. It's such a joke.
It is. It's powerful stuff. I have, if you're interested, if we don't have a caller yet, I have some stuff from the Awareness book, Anthony DeMello, that I think presents what we're talking about here from a slightly different perspective. It's in the book Awareness. Anthony says, here's 4 steps to wisdom. The first thing you need to do is get in touch with negative feelings that you're not even aware of. Lots of people have negative feelings they're not aware of. And he goes on to talk about that for a couple paragraphs. But he says, you can be depressed and not know it until you bump up against somebody who's really joyful. He says the second step in the 4-step process is to understand that the feeling is in you, not in reality. That's such a self-evident thing, but do you think people know it? They don't believe me. They've got PhDs, they're presidents of universities, but they haven't understood this. They didn't teach me that at school. They taught me everything else. As a man once said, I got a pretty good education. It took me years to get over it. That's what spirituality is all about. Unlearning all the rubbish they taught you. Negative feelings are not in reality, they are in you. Stop trying to change reality. The next thing is the third step. Never identify with the feeling. It has nothing to do with the I. Don't define your essential self in terms of that feeling. Don't say, I am depressed. If you must say something, say, it's depressed. If you want to say something, there is depression. I'm recognizing that energy. But don't say, I'm gloomy. That's your illusion. That's your mistake. There's a depression right there. There are hurt feelings there now, but let it be. Leave it alone. It'll pass. Everything passes. Those are just swings of the pendulum. Do you want your drug? Get ready for the hangover. One of the pendulum swings to the other. And then he says, your society is not going to be happy to hear this because you become terrifying when you open your eyes and you understand this. How do you control a person like this? He doesn't need you. He's not threatened by your criticism. He doesn't care what you think of him or what you say about him. He's cut all those strings and he's not a puppet any longer. It's terrifying. So we've got to get rid of him. He tells the truth. He's become fearless. He's stopped being human. Behold, a human being at last. He broke out of the slavery and he broke out of their prison. No event justifies a negative feeling. There is no situation in the world that justifies a negative feeling. That's what all our mystics have been crying themselves hoarse trying to tell us, but nobody listens. The negative feeling is in you. You don't have to do anything to acquire happiness. The great Meister Eckhart once said beautifully, God is not attained by a process of addition to anything in the soul, but by a process of subtraction. You don't do anything to be free. You drop something, then you're free. It reminds me of the Irish prisoner who dug a tunnel under a prison wall and managed to escape. He comes out right in the middle of the schoolyard where little children are playing. Of course, when he emerges from the tunnel, he can't restrain himself anymore, and he begins to jump up and down crying, I'm free, I'm free, I'm free. A little girl there looks at him scornfully and says, that's nothing, I'm 4. The fourth step, how do you change things? How do you change yourself? There are many things you must understand here, or rather, just one thing that can be expressed in many ways. Imagine a patient who goes to the doctor and tells him what he is suffering from. The doctor says, very well, I have understood your symptoms. Do you know what I will do? I'll prescribe a medicine for your neighbor. And the patient replies, thank you very much, doctor. That makes me feel much better. Isn't that absurd? But that's what we all do. The person who is asleep always thinks he will feel better if someone else changes. You're suffering because you're asleep, but you're thinking, wow, how wonderful life would be if somebody else would change. How wonderful life would be if my neighbor changed, if my wife changed, if my boss changed. We always want someone else to change so that we will feel good. But has it ever struck you that even if your wife changes or your husband changes, what does that do to you? You're just as vulnerable as before. You're just as idiotic as before. You're just as asleep as before. You are the one who needs to change, who needs to take medicine. You keep insisting, I'll feel good because the world is right. Wrong. The world is right because I feel good. That's what all the mystics are saying.
Very powerful. Very powerful. What a great way to say it. Now, Anthony DeMello is a Catholic priest, right?
Well, he's no longer in the body, but he was a Jesuit.
Right.
Jesuit priest, and far more than just a Jesuit priest. He was a fabulous thinker and integrator of ancient truths from many, many disciplines.
Well, he understood the teachings of Yeshua and applied them, which is a rare thing anywhere in our world today. What you just read is the essence of the Aramaic teachings of Yeshua. In a nutshell, it's just a modern way of saying it, and of course, saying the same thing we're saying. I mean, this man is a true Catholic priest. If you look back, the original meaning of priesthood was one who had done their work and had awakened. And sadly, that's not the way that most educational systems work in any religious orders. It's just, the game of taking another brainwash and adding another layer of TSRs to the ones that are already there that are so insane. So here's somebody who took and actually applied the teachings and obviously has had the experience. And you can't talk about an experience you don't have. So if you hear a preacher of any kind railing about hell and damn fire and, all the stuff that goes along with it, instead of talking about the awesome active presence of love, you know that you've got somebody who hasn't had an experience of the awesome active presence of love. Because if they had, that's what they'd be talking about. Someone who's talking about the other is talking about that because that's all they've had an experience of. And they don't know that Yeshua was dissing that whole insane game of fear and hostility. They just don't know it because they haven't experienced what he was teaching. We actually had a preacher who communicated with us. This goes back probably about 2 years ago now, and he wrote to me and asked if, as the director of the Kaboris Foundation, if he could use a page from the manuscript for a cover for a book he was writing. And we got communicating about this, and he shared that he had been a preacher, hellfire, damnation-type preacher for 50 years, and had a breakdown. His breakdown was so deep that he could not pick up a book, he could not read a word, he couldn't do anything for a year. He was just totally dissolved, which of course we know is a healing crisis. And then the book he was writing that he wanted to use a page of the manuscript for was a book about how when he came out of this 1 year of total breakdown, he picked up the Bible, and all of a sudden, for the first time in 50 years of reading it, he realized it was about love. that was the whole bottom line of it. And he'd been preaching fear and damnation and, condemnation and, make sure everybody knows they're going to go to hell. He'd been preaching that for a half a century. And now what he does is he works with ministers trying to get them to understand there's an experience that Yeshua offered us, and that was going back to the direct experience of our human lives. Let's do it, folks, instead of stand around and keep loading more TSRs of fear and hostility and rage and grief and terror and pain and trauma and have to and must and obey and, just all that stuff. So it sounds like, Anthony, and from the, you shared a couple of his books with me in the reading I've done, like he's had the experience, and that's pretty awesome. And that's what we're here to share with people, and that's what we're here to support is that experience becoming the common experience of humanity. And to, in decoding the information from the Aramaic, and by the way, Aramaic Friday, this Friday, be on the show with us, we'll have Dale Hoffman again. Hopefully that's going to continue beyond the month of March. But when you start decoding it from the Aramaic, it's all a set of tools for how to have that experience. And then let's talk about what's really important. Do you think going to hell is important if you know that you're made of the stuff called love and that you're made in the image and likeness of the love of God? Do you think that's important? It's like, it's a joke. It's an insane joke. And it's time for us to wake up to, oh, we are made of the stuff called love. Yeshua didn't say, I come to send you to hell. Yeshua said, I come to bring you life and bring it more abundantly. Do you not know that the Father is within you? Did you not read your scriptures? I mean, it just goes on and on and on. But, of course, we can only talk about the experiences we've had. So thank you for sharing some of Anthony's wisdom there. That's pretty powerful, and we certainly hold him in a blessing as he's not in his body any longer. And, maybe he'll peek in on us once in a while and give us a little input and a little support with taking this work to every mind, heart, and being on the planet.
Well, you're very welcome. He left the body in 1987, so.
I was actually out in New Mexico a few years back, and I was invited to address a group of retired priests in a monastery out there, Catholic priests. And, I presented forgiveness, and I presented the Aramaic idea of who we are. And they were just like, oh, my God, why didn't anybody ever tell me this? And then they started asking, what do you think the church is going to do when they find out you're teaching this? Because, of course, it doesn't fit with the dogma anymore. The dogma that most churches are teaching about fear. It just doesn't fit at all. And I just said, well, I think we're at a time where there's enough of an energetic, Yeshua talked about a little leavening leavens a whole loaf. I think we're at a point where there is enough of an energetic shift going on that anybody who hears it shifts and switches. Just, instead of doing the old garbage, the light coming from being has become so bright and so widespread on the planet now that anybody who really looks is going to make a shift. So I feel quite secure and quite safe in presenting it now, whereas in the past, I mean, it was you were up for crucifixion if you presented truth.
Well, there's
Go ahead.
Guy Finley is another teacher that we've talked about in the past, and you've met him. And I had an occasion recently to go back and listen to his 16 CD set titled Fearless and Free. And there's a part in one of those where he gives a quote and then people laugh, and he says, well, it's a really good thing you can laugh because there are millions of people that would string me up for this.
Yep.
Because it's essentially just saying the truth about how our freedom is going to come from inside of us, not from anyone or anything outside of us, not from a political leader, not from a religious leader. And I think you're right. I'm experiencing it more and more with people that come to the group, and in the first session, they get whatever we're talking about, and they start doing a worksheet, and they have some results, and it really is building momentum compared to what it was just 2 or 3 years ago, much less the 7 years ago when I started the group.
Exactly. Yeah, I am so excited about the way that the work is catching on and how it's moving around the globe. It's just awesome to see the support group starting, and I know we've got people listening in the Middle East, and I strongly urge you, if you're there, to start a support group, to start to work with people straight up, and let's bring the human experience into vogue. Let's bring it into the total experience that we humans were designed to have. Jeanie, that example that I asked for, do you have any thoughts in that regard? Anything to share?
Well, I do, but we have 2 callers that are holding, so you want to...
Oh, well, let's go for a caller then. Let's go for a caller.
First one is area code 765. You're on the air.
Michael, it's Kevin again.
Well, hey, Kevin, welcome.
I am I'm going in the wrong direction in the parking lot. You got to love it. I'm about ready to go take my insurance exam, so things you told me on Tuesday have definitely helped clear my head so that I can do what I have to do. So thank you for that.
Cool. Well, one of the things that I found when I was taking exams when I was in school is that if I wasn't sure what answer the prof was looking for, is I'd close my eyes, I'd take a breath, I'd breathe myself into the professor's space and say, what answer are you looking for? What's this about? And then I'd listen, and that would give me my answer. And where before I understood how to do that, high school, I didn't do very well at all. But when I went to law school, I ran a 4.5 average or 4.0 average, and was on the dean's list, which, I mean, I never would have conceived of that before. So just ask. Just breathe, take a deep breath, breathe into their space, and ask, what are you looking for? And the answers are there.
Good. I hadn't thought about that, but that's useful, and I've been breathing all the way from home over to the college, so
well, good
I'm breathing. So in about 3 hours, I'll be done, and I'll be on a new job, and I fully understand a better perception of all my suffering has been because I blamed the job instead of taking accountability and saying, well, make a different choice. Now I'm making a different choice, so I'm stepping out on the unknown.
Okay, and my next piece of input would be that now that you're stepping out on your own and taking the geographic cure, everything that you didn't resolve that you had blamed on the job, you're going to take with you. And as it starts to rear its ugly head again, which it will,
yes,
what I invite you to do, instead of thinking that it's got anything to do with anybody but you, is to recognize, oh, I think the reason I'm upset is because somebody asked me to move my boat. And I interpreted that as I have to get it out of here and what a trauma it is, instead of, oh, they were asking me to move it 40 feet. That's such a great example.
Okay.
You know? And
that's good. I'll remember that too.
I experience suffering because my mind is set to produce suffering. I have TSRs for suffering. And I can come up with 1,000 reasons for it, and none of the reasons are true. The only reason I have any form of suffering is because I have a TSR for suffering, and when I decide to forgive, and that's what the worksheet is about, then I remove that suffering. And by the way, anybody who's listening to the show who isn't acquainted with the forgiveness process, if you go to our website, whyagain.com, on the right-hand side there's a link that says Download Worksheets. It's about the 6th link down. Click on that. The first 7 links under that section will give you the whole story of forgiveness. Take the worksheet, start to use it. Watch what happens. Drill down into those parts of your mind. As Anthony DeMello says, you've got to start to look at the parts of you that hold unhappiness. And as you bring those forward in the presence of love, they'll simply dissolve, and we get to move on. Now, just think, we've got thousands of people around the planet at this moment who are doing worksheets every day, who are moving this understanding forward. That's creating the leavening. That's creating the critical mass. And so we ask each of you today, tomorrow, the next day, just even if it's just one little tiny irritation, do a worksheet on it and build the momentum of this understanding so that we can flood the planet with human life. That's what we're here to do. And of course, Kevin, we appreciate your son who's in prison right now, who's teaching it in the jails and developing a program using the tools there. Maybe the whole purpose he's doing that whole thing was to get him in a position where he'd understand this and be able to take it into that venue.
And that's my point. If anybody says these won't work, they can come talk to me, and I'll tell them what a real phoenix is.
There you go. Awesome. So
I got to go take my test. So.
Okay. We'll hold the space. Good luck with it.
Blessings.
Appreciate you. Okay, Jeanie, you've got another caller?
We do. Area code 954, you're on the air.
Welcome, 954. You're on the air. Give us a name. Where are you calling from? Of course, you're calling from Fort Lauderdale area, but who are we talking to? Hello, 954.
Hello?
Well, hello there.
Hi, this is Nene.
Sounds like Nene. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. Well, it's a beautiful day today here in South Fort Lauderdale.
It is an awesome day, isn't it?
Yeah. So my question is in reference to when we when the wave is observed, okay, whatever we deny and suppress creates a wave. It sets a magnetic field, right?
Correct.
And then I know in the relationship DVD talks about what happens when a behavior occurs that triggers all the content that it's in each other's mind. I think it's in each other's mind. So if you could expand that about the brain cells that you call for the behavior to happen.
I didn't quite understand your question, Danae.
Okay. When a behavior recurs, for instance, in my case, one of the patterns that I am dissolving is that I don't get support from the males, men. Whatever support they offer, at the end, they never come out with it. So in order for me to attract that behavior, I have the brain cells for that to happen, but the other person has to have it too?
Yeah, the other person is somehow in resonance, and I will tend to pull that out of them with the energy that I carry. You know, a good example of that can be the woman or the man that marries an alcoholic, and they go through hell, they leave the relationship, they marry someone else, another alcoholic, they go through hell, they leave the relationship, and they specifically start looking for somebody who doesn't drink, and they find someone who doesn't drink, and they go, now I'm safe. They don't forgive the energy in them of drinking and the pain they've experienced through stimulated by drinkers. Then they'll tend to carry that field, and lo and behold, here's this person who's never taken a drink in their life, who all of a sudden they're married to them, and they become an alcoholic because of the potential and the energetic draw. You know, we talked about those PSRs, those permanent and stay resident programs. So this person who, you know, this woman finds someone who hasn't ever drank in their lives, and of course they don't know that the reason they haven't drank is because, you know, father, grandfather, great-grandfather was an alcoholic, and this person has just stayed away from alcohol. But because this woman has this fear about alcoholics, she never forgives, she never removes that energy from herself. She's continuously, literally, in a high-energy, measurable wave, radiating this fear of alcoholics, and all of a sudden it activates or resonates those brain cells that go back maybe 3 or 4 generations in this man, and all of a sudden he succumbs to alcohol and starts to drink and becomes an alcoholic. So we have these energetic patterns, and to recognize that when we have these energetic patterns, we will tend to behave out of them in a way that brings about the result we expect. So let's say if let's see, in the case that you're speaking about, I don't get support from the men in my life, or when they offer support, they never deliver. So I then begin to function in a way that I pull somebody in who says, okay, I'm here to support you, but because my self-fulfilling prophecy is, well, but they'll never deliver, I'll begin to behave in a way that turns them away from supporting me. And then I'll say, now, see, they didn't support me. See, it's true. Instead of recognizing that, now I've done behaviors that turn away that support, and so I've helped to produce the result. So we're looking at a dynamic, interactive process in which each person involved gets to do forgiveness work and move those patterns out of the way.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, that's a lot more clear to me. Yes.
And so I need to be very vigilant for any instant where I have any form of hostility or fear, because what hostility or fear does is it darkens my perception. So when I'm willing to process myself, just like, click, click, click that fast, if I see myself approaching someone and all of a sudden I see their behavior and I go, oh, they're gonna, and I don't nip that in the bud, capture that vibration and forgive it in me, then I'll tend to play out of it, which will tend to bring about the same old results. So we have this extremely complex interactive dynamic, and when you get two people in a relationship, if each one is willing to develop their skills to get to the point where they will capture those dynamics in themselves the instant it happens, or where their partner is willing to have feedback when one of those dynamics starts to happen. So, if the partner, if one is safe enough to say, gee, I noticed this, and instead of that partner pounding on, oh, well, don't you're I'm going to separate from you, I'm going to get hostile with you, I'm going to make sure that you never talk to me like that again. Instead, if there's the willingness to just gently receive feedback, and gently receiving feedback doesn't mean you have to believe it. It just means that if your partner says to you, gee, well, what about this? That looked like it was off base, that you can, instead of having to pound on them so that you don't have to look at your own blockage of truth, you say, oh, gee, I never thought of it that way. Gee, maybe that is what that means. Wow, when I do this, I never looked at the 95% of my mind that's hidden, at my hidden, dynamic there, and wow, thanks for showing that to me. Then each person gets to refine their skills and to move onward and upward, and that's the power of community. That's the power of that ancient African proverb that says, if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, very nice. Thank you. And then tonight, it's the support group in Spanish, and the address is in the website. And so I look forward to tonight. I'm very excited about it, and I'm just going to complete the day. And, this part is very important because in the process to continue explaining and, making it more clear and more clear in my mind.
Well, we are absolutely 1,000% here to support you in that. And so tonight in Fort Lauderdale, a Spanish support group, the flyer is on the YAGN website, so people can go there and get the address where it is tonight in Fort Lauderdale. And that's awesome, and we're delighted that you're on our team, and we're delighted to be on yours, and that you're willing to look at each layer and each level and keep moving forward. That's what we're here for.
Yes. Thank you.
Fabulous. Okay, we appreciate you. Blessings.
Yep.
Okay. Bye-bye. So, Jeanie, do we have any other callers or anything happening in the chat room, or do you have something to share with us on that earlier question?
Well, the first thing that came up that I thought of when you asked that was, go back over, I journal my worksheets and everything, and something that recently I was working with someone who had a child who was cutting themselves. And in trying to understand that action, I began doing some worksheets around it. And I know that self-injury is an attempt to control something in life when you feel like everything else is out of control. It's not really intended to hurt themselves, but even though it does, but it's a way of trying to feel better. It's a way of trying to feel something other than emptiness or loss or being out of control. And what I found in doing the worksheets was one of my own TSRs, my terminate and stay resonance. When emotional pain is too intense or tension builds or life becomes what we perceive to be unbearable, or we feel lost or we can't express ourselves or whatever, and there's a need to relieve the stress, and so people will cut themselves. And what came to me was, or people leave. And leaving or withdrawing is just like someone who's cutting themselves, the cutting hurts. Well, leaving hurts too, even if you're the one that chooses to leave. speaking of myself, if I choose to withdraw or leave a situation, it hurts me too. But what came to me in the worksheet was that it's pain by choice, and that the brain actually connects a false sense of relief to that act, to leaving, or, in another person's case, to them cutting. And that whatever you're doing actually then becomes a controller of your life. And so it's that hydro effect that I went on to do another worksheet about wanting to remove the controller in my life, to replace the leaving with just being in my being, to be love. But how I wrote the sentence, instead of writing, I want to remove the controller from my life, I wrote the sentence out and it says, I want to remove the controller, the propensity to leave or withdraw from my life. And so depending on where you put that pause, instead of saying I want to remove the controller from my life, it actually came out that what I was doing was I had a propensity to leave or withdraw from my life. So it's like the same sentence, but depending on where you put the pause, it totally changed the meaning of the sentence.
Yeah.
And so it was like, not necessarily leaving another person or another situation, but that I was actually leaving my own life.
Yeah, and that's what the dynamic with the power person does, is that we give up the direct experience of this awesome presence of love that we are to buy into the self that isn't. So that's really powerful. That's awesome. And I know, you were processing that with me when you were doing those worksheets back a little while ago, and I certainly acknowledge a whole shift in energy in you and in our relationship and in our work in the world as a result of your doing that piece of work. So I congratulate you and acknowledge you for your willingness and your integrity in doing the process. It's powerful.
Thank you. So our call-in number is 646-200-4169. We're down to about 7 minutes. But give us a call, press 1. It puts you in queue to talk to Michael. Otherwise, Tim has dropped off, but David is still with us. David, do you have a situation like that?
That was the next question I was going to ask. Is David, do you have anything that might inspire anybody in this regard?
Oh, inspired. Yeah, you know what? I was reading something right where the show was, when Tim was talking, and we were talking about this, about love and connecting and our true essence and who it is that we are. And the language that often gets used is, it does stimulate whatever it is that's coming up. And I coincidentally picked up this piece of paper that love is all there is. There's only one presence and one power, one love, and it acts through me in this moment and always. I am inspired and moved by the love within me, and I dance with grace in all my relationships. Love is all there is. I am God's instrument of love. And I thought, wow, that's a pretty good description to be able to use versus the one that my carbon-based memory is associated with what love is, that to really define and to create a new definition that will resonate and self-inspire that energy that's within me that I'm connected with. For, you've talked about on many occasions that often that the word love is really referred to as approved of.
And also, David, as you say that in the way that you said it, you resonated. My mind works a lot with music. And you look at how many terminate and stay resonance, TSRs, are put into our minds with music when people just go along with the mindless thoughts in music. And I forget, I think it was the Shondells that sang a song decades ago, and the melody line, or the kind of the refrain of it was, love hurts, love hurts. It just repeats that thought over and over. And boy, somebody who buys that one is in deep trouble.
Yeah, and the words, the words are like notes of a song that they help form and create and resonate certain emotions and feelings that are connected to that. And as you talk about the file folder effect, I can use the word love, and tonality has a lot to do with it. My intention has to do with it. There's a little exercise that I invite people to kind of recognize that I can use the word love, and I can say, I love you, or I can say, I love you. And the tonality, the intention of where it's coming from is what really, playing a note on a piano, then I can bang the note, or I can gently touch the note as well. And I think that plays in addition to the words. The words do resonate an image and the senses with it. And if it's connected with some things that are really meant approved or accepted, then it's a challenge to start creating that different visual and those different feelings with it. So that's just an offer of some words, or a way of reforming and creating. And, from my experience, kind of like when you talk about doing what's my purpose in life, with the workshop that you do, Purpose, Personal Power, and Commitment, then it begins with certain words that I may borrow from someone else at the time, so that then I resonate the brain cells and the intention from within myself, that then I create the words for myself. And so if someone feels inspired that they want to have these words, that they can email and ask for them, and use that as a way of triggering and pointing in the direction of connecting with the true essence of who it is that we are, a true creative essence. So that's what I have.
Very cool. Well, David, thank you for that input. And one of the things that Jeanie just informed me of, we've been having the challenge, and I'd forgotten to mention this earlier, that we've been getting some reports from people on the website that has been coming up as being under construction. And we've been doing some work on it, but the site has been continuously available. And apparently, and it's some kind of a glitch, if you just put in whyagain.com, it'll come up with this message about being under construction. But if you put in www.whyagain, then the under construction disappears. So just so people have that piece of information. And we're coming down to the last minute, so time is just about finished. We appreciate you. Say again? Oh, that's right. For those who are in Tampa, Sunday, we just added an additional workshop. We're going to do a Mind Shifters support group worksheet practicum on Sunday afternoon from 4 to 6 o'clock at Unity North in Tampa. So come and play with us. Learn how to create the best you get of your eternal life. We appreciate you. We bless you. And bring a stranger to the show with you tomorrow. Remember, Aramaic Fridays on Friday with Dale Hoffman and I and Jeanie and David and Tim having a conversation. Blessings. Lots of love. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Mind Shifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife Jeanie, who present the internal Aramaic process of forgiveness. Michael and Jeanie are here every Monday through Friday on Earth Angels Radio. For more on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. That's www.whyagain.com.